Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendy Blythe, Chair of FeCRA, and I'd like to invite you all to FeCRA's 220 AGM by Zoom. Let me explain how the meeting will work. To avoid the background noise being intolerable, everyone except the speaker will be on mute by default. When it comes to voting or proposing or seconding, you can either use the raised hand icon if you know how to do that, or else wave your hand around. So before we start, I'd like to introduce the present committee. They include Jean Glasberg, our secretary. Jean, can you wave to everybody? John Latham, our treasurer. John, thanks. Angela Chadwick-Healy. Angela, great. John Caldwell. John, can I see you? Yep. Lillian Rundblad. Thanks, Lillian. Barbara Taylor. And John Lawton, our membership secretary. John. I think John was there earlier, so everybody can see him. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I think that's a tribute to Cambridge residents that we've managed to get together like this again to support FeCRA, despite the challenges of COVID-19 and Zoom. So we look forward to the time when we can hold a bigger and more sociable meeting again. We'll run swiftly through the business part of the evening so as to not to keep you and our excellent speakers waiting. So you've all read the minutes for the last AGM meeting and matters arising, I'm sure. May I remind those present that only those who are members of residents' associations are eligible to vote. So please can we hold up your hands or press the raised hand icon to say, do we approve them, please? Everybody? Are we all? Everybody? Okay. Anybody, can I have a proposer, please? Seconder? Can I have a proposer? Jean. Jean, okay, thanks, Jean. A seconder? Thanks, John. All those in favour? All those in favour? Crucially, anyone against? Anyone against? No. Can we now approve them, please? Thanks. I now turn to our treasurer, John Latham, for his report. John, can I turn over to you, please?
Thanks very much, Wendy. Good evening, everybody. I'm now going to try and share, so let's see if that works. No, let's see if this works. There we are. I hope you can all see that. Those are our accounts to the 29th of February.
Sorry, John, we can't see them at the moment.
Oh, well, that's obviously not working.
The share screen green button at the bottom.
Yeah, I've tried that. No joy. Let's try again. Right. Not seeing anything? Are you seeing nothing? No. Well, I think we'll have to forego that pleasure for the sake of brevity.
Well, you can just talk us through it.
I'll just talk you through it. There's not a lot to report, really. The take from the last AGM was rather greater than the previous years, so that's very kind and generous. We've also been lucky to have donations from 2 residents' associations and a couple of individuals, so that helps us along the way too. And then one of the committee members very kindly donated her personal assistant to assist with last year's AGM, so we're showing a donation in kind there. The AGM expenses were very similar between the previous year and this last year, about £400–500 each year. In terms of direct outlay, although of course we benefited from the professional secretarial support. So in all, we end the year, last year, 29th of February, a leap year, with £850 in the bank. And of course, this year, we won't either have the expenses of an AGM or the costs of an AGM. But we will have the opportunity to receive donations, and we have a Just Giving page and we would encourage those who feel so inclined to make a contribution towards the cost of running FeCRA, which has no affiliations and no sponsorship from any third party, and we're therefore entirely independent in the way we operate. If anybody has any questions, I'll be delighted to try and answer them. I haven't noticed anybody waving to ask a question, so back to you, Wendy, on the accounts, if you want.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, John. So, question now is: do we approve the accounts? Can we have a proposer, please? Anybody? Thanks, John. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, David. All those in favour, hold up your hands or press the raise hand icon, please. Thank you very much. Any against? Hope not. Anyone against? Right. No. Can we now approve them then, please? Okay. Okay. Hands away for hands. Great. Okay. Sorry, we're all new to this, so you know, bear with the kind of amateur nature of this kind of stuff. So I now turn to the election of officers. We're a small friendly committee, as you've seen, into apple peeling, etc., with several regular volunteers who lead on or support specific projects we're working on and keep members updated about meetings and any events or information that we think will interest members. There are plenty of opportunities for more people to become active members of FeCRA, either on the committee or on specific projects, and we welcome ideas and support. Committee members have signalled their willingness to stay on, which is absolutely fantastic. And I'm delighted tonight to welcome a new member of the committee, David Stoughton of Great Northern Road, RA. David, can you wave a bit more so we can see you? Okay, I don't know whether you want to say hello or not, or just, anyway, you'll be speaking later. So, right, can we have a proposal for David, please? Thank you, Barbara. Hands please, or press the raise hand icon. Could we please take a vote on that?
Wendy, we need a seconder.
Oh, sorry, I thought we'd got a seconder.
Morecambe was prepared
to
second.
Morecambe, fantastic. Thanks very much. And Morecambe knows all the form as well, so it's much better than me. Right, so we're okay on David, you're okay. Right, all those, we need to, sorry, Jean. Yeah, sorry. You're on mute. Jean?
Yeah, David's been proposed now and seconded. We need to vote on him.
I thought we'd voted on that, sorry. Okay. No. Okay, sorry, can we all vote on David, please? I thought we all said, I said, was everybody in favour? Okay, well, I'm in favour, so thanks very much, David.
We're all in favour.
I'm in favour. Now, we want to take a show of hands. I hope everybody's in favour of the committee. All those in favour, please. Anybody unhappy about the committee, or against? Any hands? No. Okay. Right. I think pretty well done on all that stuff now. So I'm now going to turn to the chair's report, which will also be available on the website shortly. So, Cambridge's acute housing problems and lack of affordable housing, together with the unabated growth agendas pursued by government, big business, the universities, colleges and property developers working together, continues to pose challenges to the quality of life. But the climate crisis and COVID-19 has given the impact of this a new focus and urgency. Almost 100 residents associations and community groups are part of the FeCRA network. They point out that it's this network of community groups that the councils turn to for support throughout the pandemic. This is a very engaged city. People care. They want to be involved. At local plan briefings to RA and community reps and Q&A sessions, RA reps have raised a number of questions, some of which speakers tonight will be touching on. Alan Brigham of Mill Road asked about the provision of affordable housing, summed up concerns about a growth agenda supported by inward migration and building 1 million homes when he said, all of England can't move to Cambridge. What Cambridge needs is affordable homes and jobs for our children. Public realm, social inclusion and environmental issues have been a key issue for RAs and community groups across Cambridge. Plans for urban densification and greenbelt transport corridors and the scenarios for sustaining the high growth that is proposed threaten green spaces and city garden wildlife corridors. All over the city, residents who are concerned that their local nature and green spaces are under threat are forming friends groups and working on management plans to try and protect them. Can I have slide 1, please? Cambridge's informal spaces with ducks, swans and cows are admired all over the world and have been a lifesaver during this pandemic. Biodiversity and cowslip planting featured in the town and gown plans of the Friends of Queen's Green have been working with a City Council open space officer on management proposals that include not cutting grass, no herbicide spraying, and not using commercial flower seed mixes. The plans mirror what is being done by other groups. Have a second slide, please. Interest in Grantchester Meadows and preserving the unique rural qualities of this much loved Cambridge landscape and its connected green spaces has led RA members from across the city to set up a Friends of Skaters Meadow footpath to protect the verges and hedges of Skaters Meadow. Another Friends group is working on management plans for Lammasland. Back to meeting screen, please. Friends of St Albans Rec, a group set up by Arbury mums, is campaigning to protect the natural open spaces of the Rec, one of the few places where local children can experience nature in this densely populated ward. From development and urbanisation by the City Council and its chosen housing partner Hill. Friends of St Matthew's Peace, with similar concerns about a proposal for densification of their local park by an investors consortium for student accommodation, say it will monster the trees and open spaces of this park in their densely populated ward. Residents say that the very qualities of life and environment that have made Cambridge unique don't scale. That same human scale that makes Cambridge a success is vulnerable. Schemes proposed as a solution to transport problems cut bus journey times by minutes, yet involve a loss of trees, hedgerows and green space. This ignores what makes Cambridge special and the Council's commitments to tackling the biodiversity crisis. Impaired quality of life threatens the most vulnerable. Residents are asking, why is there no assessment of impacts and issues arising from current and already approved growth at this stage? Why is there no engagement with strategic environmental capacity issues as a vital part of the evidence base for the new plan? The plan for sustaining high growth and building 1 million houses is underpinned by Natural Cambridge's vision for doubling local nature with urban fringe parks in the Greenbelt. The River Cam is the only river in the country that is not back to normal flows. Yet, exponential growth fuels huge pressure upon our natural water supplies. Concerns about the impact of over-abstraction on the River Cam have been expressed, but large development keeps getting approved. There's gridlock at every level, yet the current work on evidence for the local plan considers only housing growth. Why? What about environmental capacity, the impact of transport proposals, current growth ambitions, the need to address climate change and Cambridge's historic environment before credible issues and options can be identified? Residents in North Cambridge ask, how is the proposal for the North East Cambridge development being coordinated with other developments in the area? They point out that this equates to a town the size of Ely. The shortcomings of Cambridge's expansion so far have been highlighted nationally. Inequality has not been addressed, and new housing developments and design do not meet high standards. People say they've lost confidence in the planning process. Resident groups all over the city have recognised that Cambridge's success factors are uniquely difficult to scale up. Hundreds of people have attended meetings and marches, pointing out that the cumulative impact of current growth ambitions must be evidence assessed before credible decisions can be made. But we're running out of time. As a former Assistant Chief Planner of Cambridge City Council highlighted at the City Council Leaders Briefing, there is no option in this plan to limit growth. Why not? Where is the evidence that is necessary? Why are our civic leaders failing to question this or represent the views of their constituents? Residents want Cambridge to be a sustainable, green city, which is inclusive for all. People care. They want to be involved. Many good ideas have been put forward, which are based on grassroots community participation. As the landscape architect, Kim Wilkie has said previously, genuine consultation has the best outcomes. When plans are sprung, fully formed on a community, it destroys the sense of belonging and being part of a continuing evolution of place. Now, that's the end of my talk. So now we're going to hear from our speakers. So Jean, would you like to introduce our speakers, please?
Yes, I am delighted to introduce our speakers this evening. They're all members of RAs or community groups that are linked to FeCRA. They're going to give us a little bit more detail on the key issues that Wendy has already presented as having been of particular interest to residents over the past year. So our first two speakers are going to be speaking about the threat to green spaces. They're going to talk about their particular areas. I did raise last year the issue that green space is seen as empty space at the moment. Our Parks and Recreation officers have been retitled, and their title now is Asset Development Managers. And that really tells us what we need to know about the kind of threats that our green spaces are facing. So the first person we're going to hear from is Dr Valerie Neal, who is a member of the Friends of St Matthew's Peace in Petersfield, and she's going to tell us about the plans to build student accommodation there. Then we're going to hear from Sonia Spinks, who's chair of the Friends of St Alban's Rec in Arbury, and she's going to tell us about the development plans for that site, which I think are due to go to the planning committee next week. Then we're going to hear from Stephen Tomkins about the water issues. Stephen's a leading river expert. He's the chair of Cam Valley Forum, and so he's going to brief us little bit more about what's going on with water and the river. And then the growth agenda is a major item underpinning a lot of these issues. So we've got three speakers on that, and they're going to talk about different aspects. So first of all, we've got David Plank, who's a member of the Trumpington Residents Association Committee, and he's going to talk about the growth agenda. Then we're going to hear from Tony Booth. He's going to speak about what's driving it. He's a teacher, psychologist, and professor of education, a polymath. And he said for many years he's joined in education work that's been related to environmental activism. And then finally, we're going to hear from David Stoughton, our new committee member, who's from the Great Northern Road Residents Association. And he's going to look at, is there any alternative to this? What else might we look at instead? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to hand over to Valerie then. She's going to do the presentation about St Matthew's Peace. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you very much, Jean. I'll need to share my screen, so I'm just going to push the green button and hope for the best. Has that worked? And I'm going to launch my PowerPoint. Nope. Share. Okay. Can you see that? Okay, good. Well, I'm going to start with the first screen rather than the second, if I'm allowed to. Okay, always best to start with the first. Okay, I can't hear myself except I'm speaking into my room. And I haven't done one of these before, so fingers crossed. Okay, this is a view of St Matthew's Peace. Where that huge red question mark is where they propose to have a 6-story tall student accommodation block. So St Matthew's Peace, its history from 1898 to now, a tragedy in many parts of many players. Can it be saved? And that's me. So briefly, St Matthew's Peace began in 1898 when it was opened, when the Cambridge Commons Committee gave the land to the Mayor of Cambridge and the St. Matthew's Piece was opened for the recreation and leisure of the local community forever. And there's a banner celebrating the establishment of the piece back in 1898. Now, the St. Matthew's Piece actually was used, with the odd hiccup during times of war, for recreation and leisure of local residents, including in 1968, the opening of the Howard Mallet Youth Centre, which some of you may have heard of. It was opened in 1968, built by the City Council, paid for by the City Council on City Council Park land, and operated as a successful youth centre, despite in 1974, the local government reorganisation meaning that youth and education went to the County Council. And there's a very cheerful photograph of Dennis Maxted. I found his picture online. He was the much loved warden of the Howard Mallet Centre. Now that's an indication of how incredibly popular the Howard Mallet Centre was. If you look, I don't know if you can see here, this chap in red from the mock-up of the Beatles album. This is a recreation of that album with photos from the 70s of people who attended the sorts of discos and social events that took place at the Howard Mallet Centre for 30 years. There was a really successful five-a-side football team that simply died in 1998 when the County Council got rid of the Howard Mallet Centre. There was boxo, there was a judo dojo, there were after-school activities. Right, am I unmuted now? Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes.
Anyway, there are many successful activities at the Howard Mallet Centre over a period of 30 years, and it was truly treasured by the local community. Now, this is a map from 2006, and it's a City Council map, and it shows the protected open space, and it shows that the whole of the the whole of St. Matthew's Piece extended from Abbey Road up in the south to New Street in the north. Right, and that's from 2006. Now, the protected open space in Petersfield is especially precious. Now, this is taken from the local plan, Appendix C, and it contrasts how very little protected open space provision there is in Petersfield with all the other wards in the city. So I don't know if you can read it, that there are 0 county wildlife sites. There is 1 city wildlife site, which is the Mill Road Cemetery. There are no allotments. There are some amenity green spaces. There are no civic spaces. There are some very small spaces for young children. There are no natural or semi-natural green spaces. And the only park and garden in the whole of Petersfield is St. Matthew's Piece. Now that 1 park contrasts to the 56 parks in the other wards of the city. There are 14 wards, so there are 56 in the other 13 and 1 in Petersfield. And the only outdoor sports facility is Fenner's, which is hardly accessible to local residents. Now, if we look at population density, this is also taken from a City Council publication. You can tell where Petersfield is. It's the dark cherry red blob in the middle. Petersfield Ward has the highest density of population in the city by some way. Interestingly, the second most densely populated ward is Arbury. So you're hearing tonight from 2 speakers where their protected open space are being threatened despite already living in the most densely populated wards. Okay, 1998 is when the rot set in. Not only did we lose our local library on Mill Road, but it was the first of a whole series of failed initiatives, one after another, all resisted by the local community. I won't run through the details, but you can see there was 1 failed initiative in 1998, another in 2006, another in 2014, and 2018. That 3rd developer sold the site to, well, it's complicated who they sold them to. Let's call them Federated Hermes. Owns the site now. This is a map taken from the County Council website. They're supposed to publish their data annually regarding their assets. And you can see the place that I have asterisked on the map. That shows the Howard Mallet Centre on northern St. Matthew's Piece. The roads are East Road and Newmarket Road, for those of you who are not familiar with Petersfield. So according to the County Council website, they own that land. But the truth is they don't. They had sold that land in February 2018. Right, this is what they sold. Can you see the red marked line on that map? That's the large piece of land. The blue marked line is the Howard Mallet Centre building. I don't know when any of you have most recently heard about a property transaction in Cambridge, but they sold that site for £40,000, the freehold of it. I'll let that figure hang in the air. If you notice the red asterisk on the right of your screen, that's from the Cambridgeshire County Council Property Transaction Report, confirming that it was £40,000 that it was sold for. We obtained that by Freedom of Information request only last month. Interestingly, if you recall, if you look at this map here, and look at the little strip of land immediately to the south of it, that little strip of land, this big piece of land was sold by the County Council for £40,000, and in September, the developers to whom they sold the land sold it on also for £40,000. On the same day, they sold that little strip of land, which has a permanent restrictive covenant on it, preventing any building from ever taking place, and they sold that little slice of land for £9.46 million. I don't understand it either. So who now owns half of St Matthew's Piece? Well, there's a whole nest of different financial organizations. Federated Hermes are the apparent property developer, according to the consultation materials they put out. But in fact, they're simply doing the work on behalf of BNP Paribas, who are doing the work on part of Metro Property Unit Trust, who are actually part of Schroders Real Estate. Now, they are a global asset and wealth manager, and they are the ultimate current owner of this land. And BNP Paribas care for Schroders Investment. So whatever happened to the local community's recreation and leisure and their forever right to it? How has this been possible? Right, so what is Federated Hermes proposing to do? Mill Road TV has cooperated with local Petersfield supporters to create a 2.5-minute video, which I'm going to show you now. I'm going to shift that to from this presentation, so fingers crossed. Make that full screen size and go.
It is a sign of the times that today, in 1898, we are providing some open ground in this thickly populated neighbourhood to improve the health of the community. It gives me great pleasure to declare St Matthew's Piece open for the recreation of the inhabitants of this area forever.
Well, good afternoon. Cambridge is booming, and some people are even calling it the Goldrush City. A lot of money is being made here, and the city is changing fast, and not necessarily to the benefit of those who live here. But St Matthew's Piece is still an oasis, a small but peaceful open space in this densely populated neighbourhood. Given in 1898 to the people of this area forever, today is the anniversary of the 122nd, yes?
Excuse me, don't you know what's really going on here?
Well, would you like to speak to camera?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, they're planning to build a massive student accommodation block on top of that building over there, on top of it. It'll be enormous. It's nearly 20 meters high at the top. It'll tower over this lovely little park. It'll make the quiet, pleasant place busy and noisy. And they're even planning to cut down some of the trees.
So as you just heard, people feel very strongly about what is happening to this beautiful place. And I'm going to hand over now to is it the Friends of the Piece?
Yes, we're Friends of St Matthew's Piece. And we need to be ready for when the planning application is put in. We don't yet know what date that will be. So please follow us on Twitter, share our Facebook page, and email us to join our supporters list.
Right. So that's what they're planning to do.
Thanks a lot, Valerie.
I've not quite finished. I've got 3 more brief slides.
Okay.
So I'll send these links to FeCRA to distribute to you. So please do sign up to our supporters list. That's our email address. You don't need to scribble it down. You'll receive another copy. If you ask to be added to our supporters e-list, you'll get a one-click email, which is the GDPR way of doing things. And you'll get very occasional, maybe once a month updates as things go along. If you also want to support us, you can share, download, print, and display from some posters that show what's happening. You can share that link to that video if you liked it. You can visit and share our Facebook page. You can follow and retweet from our Twitter page. And if you're really, really keen, and this is the help I'm really looking for, we need more expertise and support in articulating strong, clear arguments for our planning battle based on local plan policies. We need help understanding land registry documents, and we need help addressing legal issues over the land deals. And please feel free to contact me via our friend's address, which again, you'll be shared. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you very much. I really hope that you get the help you need to fight this. It's a deeply depressing story. Okay, now we're going to hear from Sonia Spinks, with something very similar happening on St Alban's wreck. Do you want to tell us about it, Sonia?
Yes. Well, I'm going to just take my video off because you can see a photo of the wreck behind. So if I do that, so that's the wreck looking from St Albans Road. What you see in the distance is the Meadows Community Centre, which is supposed to be being removed and put on the land. So where you see the trees will be buildings. So they're going to go. I'll now find. So one of our concerns is, this is a map of the north of the city, and you can see the ringed area is where the wreck is. And the only other spaces that are nearby, green spaces, there's not very much on Orchard Park, as you can see, which is to the north. And if you sort of go east, there's a playing field, and there's another playing field where we're going into King's Hedges. Further south, there's a funny sort of, which looks like a sort of chopping tool, where it says playing field, is actually school playing fields, and we don't have access to that. So for Arbury and all the area west of that ring, people are using this wreck, which is ringed out there. Now, if I show you, this is the green space south of the river. So what you saw was north of the river. So this is south of the river. What we're not saying is, build on other places, other green spaces. What we're saying and highlighting is the limited green space that we actually have in the north of the city. So it is important for us, and it is important as we've grown. We've had Orchard Park, we've got Darwin Green, and we actually have, because we've lost an informal green space from Darwin Green and from Orchard Park, which was just scrubby land, we've lost those informal spaces that people use to walk their dogs or, go running or whatever. So keeping our space is important. And one of the things we're worried about is the start of building might actually not end there.
Right.
Yeah, what's actually proposed, I was trying to find I'm trying to see where it might be.
Well, it's okay.
Where
Yeah.
you're looking now is going to be a 6-story block. If you see where the trees are on the right of the picture, there will be a 6-story block, then a 4-story block and a 3-story block. And in front of that will be a 2-stroke 3 community centre. So that will actually come on the wreck and take about 8% of the wreck. At first they were going to take about a fifth of the wreck. So that has backed down, but they have never backed down on the actual number of dwellings. So there's going to be 78 dwellings, which could bring in the region of about 300 people into the neighbourhood. And that's, that might be less, it might be a bit more. The planning is going on, well, the meeting is next week. We've been scrabbling around trying to draw up our response to that with only 3 minutes. It's not very much. It is protected space. Arbury has I think next to Petersfield, we only have 7.55 hectares of open space, but that includes lots of tiny little, which I suppose might be regarded now as pocket parks. They're really just little green areas near residential places. So here, this rec is actually 2 hectares. But when you consider people from Orchard Park are using it, people from Darwin Green, or not people from Darwin Green, but the people who used to use Darwin Green as an exercise area are coming. So they're coming actually from Huntingdon Road, some of whom actually come in their cars because it's, you know, it's quite a distance to walk from Huntingdon Road. So we're getting people from all around the neighbourhood.
Who is actually proposing this development?
Well, it's Cambridge City Council with Hill Investment, and they're calling themselves Cambridge Investment Partnership. So we can't count on our councillors to support us because, in fact, King's Hedges councillor Kevin Price was one of the people who suggested this idea, because he says we have no more land and this is the land that we have, so, you know, we're going to use it to build on. He himself has actually said, oh, I used to bring my child here to play. Our councillor Michael Todd Jones, who is one of the Arbury councillors, is supporting this. I mean, he used to live in the area. I think he doesn't now. He lives off Mill Road, I think. So we can't actually rely on our councillors to support us.
No, so
540.
Sorry, Sonia, we have to finish it there. But I just want to say it's great that the residents are actually getting together to fight this, and I just really wish you good luck at the planning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
okay,
you.
now we're going to hear from Stephen, who's going to talk to us about the water issues in Cambridge. Thank you, Stephen.
Good. Thanks. Am I heard?
Yeah, good.
Lovely. Now, before I start, just let me say that John Lawton, Nicola Terry, Sue Wells and Elizabeth May, who are here this evening, also know quite a bit about this. So you could refer some questions to them if you like later. I will at the end, if I may, address the question that Wendy gave me from your group. In a nutshell, I and members of Camden Valley Forum are a lot wiser a year after the problems which we hit last year when the grantor ran dry. And if you want to look at something on your screen other than my face, I suggest you dial into Camden Valley Forum's website and have a look at a document there called Let It Flow, which is the latest thing that we've produced, which seems to answer some of the questions. Sue Wells had a part to play in producing that, for which I'm grateful. What is drought? Well, drought is lack of water, and it may be an agricultural drought, in which case it's food crops that aren't produced, or it may be a water drought from the tap, in which case your tap won't work, or it may be an environmental drought, in which case it is dry enough to do harm to the environment. And I think drought can also be anthropogenic. That is, we can cause it by the way we behave in relation to our environment. Cambridge rainfall, as you all know, is pretty low. It is highly variable, but it is not abnormal. In the last year, I have looked at the rainfall for the past 120 years. It does go up and down from year to year, but it has not diminished greatly at all. If there is any change, it is in global warming, which may have some influence upon our present position. What we really have is a groundwater crisis, and the inconvenient truth that surrounds that is that both the Cambridge Water Company and the River Cam take their water from the same source. The Cambridge Water Company is unusual amongst water companies in that 98% of its water comes out of the chalk. This is not commonly realized, and it puts us in a very difficult position if there is a great demand for water, which there still is. And I might add that in this drought spring we have had, Cambridge water consumption has gone up 20%. Why? Because it's been dry, because people have been at home, they've been washing their hands and they've been filling the paddling pool and doing all sorts of other things, not valuing water perhaps as much as we might because it is a very precious resource. The recharge of the aquifer only happens really in winter, because anyone who gardens here will know that all the rain that falls in the summer is drunk pretty much quickly by the plants and it goes back into the atmosphere. So it is only 20% of our annual rainfall which is any use to us at all in the aquifer. It is the winter rainfall, therefore, that is most beneficial. The soil moisture deficit sounds a bit technical, but that is where I think the problems are beginning to show. If you have very dry, hot summers, you may find that in half the winters, there is no recharge at all. We reckon that it's 40% only, 40% of years when you get a recharge. And if you don't get a recharge, then the aquifer goes down. The aquifer is going down. Cambridge Water Company, who we challenged, are within their license entitlement to take water. They have got what they call their headroom within the license in terms of megalitres that they are entitled to take. So there is a licensing problem there if the resource is diminishing, which we believe it is. Now, I would like to tell you a little bit of truth about those who are quite keen on development, which includes Cambridge Ahead and so on. And I have addressed several times what is called the Natural Cambridge Partnership, which is a group of people who come together because they care about development and they care about nature. And at a recent meeting which I addressed about this situation, we also had Lord King, that is Professor David King, who has been Chief Government Scientist, addressing us as well. He was there, I suspect, mostly to talk about zero carbon. But he said quite clearly to everyone who was present, if you think that you can do anything without ecosystem well-being, you are misleading yourselves. That is, if you've got a part of your natural ecosystem which doesn't function anymore, and it's failing, and it's your fault, then you have got a big problem. I've said similar things to that, to the School Eco Council, to the children. You may not like Extinction Rebellion and all they stand for, but some of those kids really care. And I gave them a Chinese proverb to remember and put on a banner. And that is, cheat the earth and the earth will cheat you. This is fundamental to understanding our ecology and educationally, I suppose, people who think that nature is just there to be exploited and used for our benefit are simply ignorant and uneducated. One of the people who Wendy brokered for us to meet was Chris Smith, Lord Chris Smith, Master of Pembroke, former Environment Minister or something in one of the Labour governments. Nice guy. He listened carefully and he said to us at the end of the meeting, and although he is a member of the Cambridge Water Board, okay, don't whinge. Just tell the politicians what they can do very clearly, and that is your best plan. So, Cam Valley Forum has joined Water Resources East, which is an umbrella body over the whole of East Anglia, which is supposed to care for our water environment. With them, we have worked hard and submitted a big paper, which is called Let It Flow, and it's on our web pages. And with that in our hands, we have been to Anthony Brown and Dan Zeichner and others and said, look, this is what we think the position is. Anthony Brown, to give him credit, has, if you've seen the Cambridge Independent this week, done something about it. He has gone to Rebecca Powell, who is the Water Minister of DEFRA, and he has asked her, saying, people in my constituency want a chalk stream task force to address the fact that our rivers are dying. This very week, another group has started up over the border in Essex called CURAT, the Cam Upper Reaches Action Team. Richard Pavitt of Chesterford has fought against development in his patch because it's unsustainable. And they are another group that's joined the campaign. There are river groups up and down the chalk who we are now connecting with, and we've got to ride two horses. That's what I've said to them. We've got to not only be protesters, not only be Fergal Sharkies and, you know, eco-rebels, we've also got to work within the system. And the system is that the water companies are going to be here for stay. They're going to provide us with water in the future to drink. And they have got to make sure that our environment is as good as it can be at the same time. It's their problem, and therefore we've got to work together with it. Enough said. Let me just turn now to Wendy's question, if I can just draw breath. The question which has come to me from your organisation is this. The River Cam is at the heart of Cambridge. Residents across the city care deeply about it. Although not experts, they want to be involved. How can they support Cam Valley Forum in protecting the river and the green spaces that are around it? Well, all I would say is love Cambridge, love its history. You must know, those of you who have any education at all, that the word Cambridge is a complete modern term. It is the River Granter, of course. It was the Grunty years ago, and it became Grantebrigi in the Anglo-Saxon times. But we've got a long history before us, our antecedents. We've had Belgic people living at Wandlebury. We've had the Romans who crossed the river. We've had the Saxons, the Angles, the Vikings, the Normans. And when the Normans came, you know, all these people, a lot of them came up the river to start with, and the river is therefore the great crossroads with the roads that go north-south, which the Romans wanted. We are on that crisscross road of river and road, a crisscross of culture. And the monastic university culture built Cambridge, made it wonderful. Some of you present tonight might even have a Cantabrigiensis degree. The Cantabrigia is what we're all about. So you must love your city, love its history, love its commons, which were put there for ordinary people to be able to make a living with their stock, etc. Those commons were given to us, and they must not be stolen, as we have heard tonight. I'm absolutely appalled by what I've heard this evening. So join community groups like Sue Wells's Cherry Hinton Brook, and there are loads of other groups for each of the commons. The Fens, Grunchton Meadows, Paradise, Sheep's Green, name it. If there isn't a group, start one, join them, inform yourself, inform the children, go and sit by the Rush stream on the Sheep's Green and see what a wonderful place it is. Learn to love the river. Look after your councillors, elect them, get the right ones, and make sure that they know how much you care about the green environment, because once developed on and built on, it will not come back. We will end up in an urban, poor, impoverished, weakened situation of misery. We've got to do something about our population and our lifestyle, and I've said enough.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That was really quite inspirational. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people here. I can see quite a few of them who are involved in these groups. And we are doing our best to address these things. And I think, you know, I totally agree with what you're saying, that it is up to us to get engaged, to get other people involved and informed, and make sure that we do fight for these things that are so important. So, I mean, that leads very nicely onto the biggest threat to this, the growth agenda. And so David is going to speak first about that. You ready, David?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, and good evening, and thank you for the invitation. That's what's happening now. It could be a lot worse. A lot worse, unless we do something about it. Cambridge and our neighbours have experienced high rates of economic growth for decades. The infrastructure essential to a decent quality of life has not kept pace. Very high house prices and rents have driven middle income and poor households out of the city, swelling traffic congestion as they commute back to work, including the key workers on who we depend, as we've been reminded. Pollution levels remain stubbornly high in parts of the city with harmful effects. Natural resources are under great strain, and in the case of water could run out, as we've heard. These adverse effects significantly outweigh the benefits of high-value economic prosperity with its more intense inequality between an echelon of high earners and other citizens, which is what's happened. Yet we are urged by powerful voices to increase our rate of growth, to double its product over the next 30 years, lest we fail to satisfy the demands of the digital and life sciences industries with the threat of their departure abroad, which the government sees as a threat to national economic growth. These powerful voices are led by the government, most of all, and the combined authorities' elected mayor. The devolution deal, which created the combined authority, commits all of our councils, all of our local councils, to this high level of growth. Cambridge Ahead, already mentioned, the strong and well-funded commercial pressure group within the city, is another influential advocate. This accelerated growth is not possible without great harm through the damage it would cause to Cambridge itself and our near neighbours, and not forgetting our neighbours. Harm through even higher housing costs, increased traffic congestion and delay, even more unreliable public transport, environmental pollution exacerbating the climate emergency, yet more densification within Cambridge itself, as we've heard, destruction of large parts of the precious green belt essential to the special character, I quotes from the current local plan of Cambridge and our neighbouring villages, and excessive strain on our health, education and other social infrastructure. The least well off and able to cope would suffer most, as they already are. This threat is very real and close to us. All of the 6 key districts, I quote, where this growth is to be, and I quote again, disproportionately located, are on our doorstep in Cambridge. They're all in Cambridge. The quality of life for all our citizens must not be exchanged for yet more economic growth for the benefit of a relative few. Such growth would also add to the decades-long neglect of the very areas in our country and county who rightly express strong resentment at their continued exclusion from the high value-added economic growth they most need. There is an opportunity to change this for the better through the Greater Cambridge Local Plan, which is under review. It allocates land for development over the next 20 years, strongly influences our surroundings, the place we live in and experience daily, things that are very important to us as individuals and communities. Local plans are governed by restrictive national planning policy, but, and this is a big but, There is scope for the authorities here to shape the content of the new plan, if there is the political will to do so in Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire councils, if there is the political will to do so. The question that I was asked, and I've provided a written answer because it demanded a written answer, was basically about, we're being told by an influential figure that growth is going to happen no matter what because of national planning policy. And I've said, basically, that's nonsense. National planning policy does not demand growth, no matter what. What it does demand is sustainable development. And that is a balance between, quote, an economic objective, a social objective, and an environmental objective. It's not just all one way. So there is opportunity. Despite this, the first conversation, that is the document that introduced the current local plan consultation, anticipates growth of at least 40,000 new homes by 2040, in the next 20 years. And if economic growth continues, possibly 66,700 new homes. This could mean as many new homes in the next 20 years as were achieved in the previous 2,000. I'll just repeat that. This could mean as many new homes in the next 20 years as were achieved in the previous 2,000. That is a real prospect if economic growth is allowed to go rip. This is not acceptable and must change. The councils deny, because I've asked them, they are working to these figures, but their public commitment to high economic growth belies this. A better future is possible for Cambridge and our neighbours if we act to secure it. My report, Cambridge Growth Beyond Reason, which is available on the FeCRA and Cambridge Commons websites, makes a dozen recommendations to help us get back some control over what we hold dear, to prevent the imminent climate catastrophe, create good, secure jobs, and provide decent and sustainable housing which we can afford, not too far away from work, on affordable public transport, while also nurturing a sense of place and identity for the future, which values what we are fortunate enough to have inherited from the past. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much. Well, now we're going to hear, you did touch on this, this is quite a scary prospect of the huge growth that is now projected. So Tony is going to now tell us why. Why is this happening? What are the drivers for this? Thank you. You're muted. You need to unmute. Unmute, Tony.
Hi.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
I'm unmuted. And it's good to be here with you, and it's good to listen to other people's speeches. And I'm kind of David's dance partner. I don't think he dances so much, but I'm your dance partner for the evening. It's been clear to many of us that growth in building and infrastructure is hurtling forward in our area, barely checked by concerns about rising CO2 emissions and damage to the environment, or by the views of residents. And that's apparent this evening. That reckless planning is spoiling our city was expressed in David Jones' 2013 book, Hideous Cambridge, A City Mutilated. Planning has often failed to improve the life of our city or the health and well-being of our communities. Council officers promised a world-class development at the station. We got uninspiring buildings and a thrombosis of traffic. I've been told that councillors do not speak their minds about growth because they're fearful of particular officers. This is what I've been told. Officers are required by the Government Act 2000 to provide unbiased, professional advice and support. Advocating for the plans of developers or advocating for growth is not unbiased. They imbibed a growth imperative in their training and need to re-educate themselves to give priority to human needs and ecological limits. I've come to think of the growth imperative disfiguring our region as a giant rampaging digger. I think this image has doubled in size recently as the government promises to dig itself out of recession with new infrastructure, barely constrained by consideration for environmental destruction. And here's the digger. There you go. It's, can you see its title? It's called the Cambridge to Oxford Arc Transformation, and the logo is placed on the digger. We could play a game with images of the power pushers and brokers in Cambridge, decide how housing seat they should be placed. Where would one place the growth lobbying Cambridge ahead, for example? What role do we give? What power do we give for central government on this machine? David Blank sees the mayor backed by the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority as a key growth driver. It's an organisation unknown to the great majority of citizens of our city and counties, I suspect. It hatches its plans at Incubator 2 at a business park in Alconbury. This is the same area where the county council is building new offices as it hands over Shire Hall on Castle Hill to developers and privatises another area of publicly used land. I can hear my grandchildren in the background. Sorry about that. The City Council, County Council and South Cambs District Council tied themselves, as David said, to the combined authority and growth with the City deal, which also spawned the Greater Cambridge Partnership, a barely known growth pusher. So when councillors say they are not committed to growth, can we take them seriously? Where do they articulate their alternative vision for our city and area? Do they feel they've been kidnapped and cannot escape to express their true opinions? The university, but not citizens groups, is represented on the executive board of the Greater Cambridge Partnership, who recently defended plans for the Cambourne guided busway because developers already had it in their schedule for 2024. Mary Evans wrote a book called Killing Thinking, The Death of the Universities in 2004. It described the way academic reflection and integrity had been sacrificed to commercial and bureaucratic processes. So we can have zombie universities urging on the high growth digger with little care for the impending ecological collapse that they're helping to accelerate. And this threatens the future of the students to whom they have a duty of care. And who will stop it? What about the conservation NGOs? The RSPB, the Wildlife Trusts and the Woodland Trust say they have campaigned against unsustainable growth in the Oxford to Cambridge arc. But because they made little progress, they're trying to apply a more modest brake on the environmental impacts of development. their efforts look like greenwashing, lending legitimacy to rampant growth. It's an outcome that could not have been worked out better by the developers themselves, who, like the oil companies and the banks, love to make a big deal of small investments in green activities or collaboration with green organizations that they help to set up and fund. What I wanted to say was, it doesn't look great, but we're not going to give up. And I see myself as an environmental activist. And I think I see most of you as environmental activists in your own various ways. And I don't see one form of activism as triumphing or better than any other. And so Stephen Tomkins, who maybe wouldn't like my form of activism, I have to say I like yours. And I hope that we'll really work together to continue our struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, well, another grim picture, but so is there any alternative to this? David Stoughton is going to give us his ideas on this. I'm sure that everybody here also has some ideas on what we would like to see instead. But let's hear David first.
Very well said. I think it's the fact that everybody else has ideas that I really want to tap into. But I've been making notes as we go because I wasn't sure what was going to be covered this evening. So forgive me, I'm going to be skipping around a few topics just to begin with before I go there. A couple of things to mention on top of what's already been said. First of all, I think that much of the poverty in Cambridge has been, or the poorer people in Cambridge have been, if sold a pup, if you like, in this growth agenda throughout. They keep being told in a kind of trickle-down theory that all these new companies and all these new developments will somehow manage to give the jobs and the well-being that they look for. It hasn't happened. It looks unlikely to happen in the future. I think this is a theory that was really discredited after the 80s, but it's still being peddled here. Secondly, I think that the planning group, or rather, sorry, the growth lobby, and I think of Cambridge Ahead and others, have had a strategy with the local environmental groups and those who are trying to pursue sustainability issues of what I would call divide and conquer. They have infiltrated and suborned many of those groups so that if you look at, for instance, Natural Cambridgeshire, just to take one, the majority of its members are actually developers or associated in some way with development. So that what we get at this point is an environment in which effectively any environmental voice is being voted down by the majority of its members. I'd like to return briefly to the COVID thing, because this may have changed things a great deal. Just some anecdotal stuff. I live in the area that Tony referred to, the new station area development, CB1. I bumped into the manager, the caretaker manager of One Station Square, supposedly an iconic building. Well, you have to ask yourself a bit. But anyway, that has thousands and thousands of square feet of office space. He said to me the other day, well, on a good week, we see 10 people at the moment. And he's not expecting anybody back for a very long time. Some of them, since a lot of them are in software, may not go back at all. And just to go back to that software thing, ARM, as we know, is not planning to send its employees back into their offices until the new year at the earliest, and a lot of them will continue to work from home. And a colleague of mine down the road works for FeCRA AGM, and they just voted, I have to say, not to go back to their offices to work. So they will continue to work from home with the occasional meeting. How many, I mean, I appreciate that there are, of course, other businesses that must work in offices, whether they need the laboratories or whatever it is. But there are a very large number of companies who may no longer need all these office buildings that are being developed. They're not intending to use them. Why are we proposing to build them? And in addition to that, I hear, and this is, again, this is taken off the radio, but a discussion going on, that it may be that people, since they no longer have to work or go into the office, may not wish to live in the area in which their business is run. So again, this idea that housing is necessary in order to feed the development of all these companies that are supposed to come into Cambridge, they may no longer be valid. On top of that, we know that COVID emphasized the importance of green spaces, not just people's back gardens, and in fact, in many ways, more importantly, the wilder spaces, which is where people manage to let off steam and recover from their, if you like, their feeling of enclosure. We've heard a lot about the constraints of water. Narrow streets in Cambridge has not been mentioned, but that's part of our constrained environment. And I hear there may be a problem with electricity. The point here is that there's a lack of focus throughout all this on, as we know, well-being and quality of life, on dealing with the extreme poverty in many parts of Cambridge, but more importantly, or not more importantly than that, but importantly in the context of the discussion we've been having this evening, biodiversity, the problems of climate change, and community. So our problem boils down to the fact that there is no alternative plan. We are not presented with an alternative. We are presented with fake alternatives regularly, false choices. So we're asked whether or not we wish to have these 40,000 houses in our backyard, or should we put them in their backyard? Another kind of divide and conquer policy. I feel that what's needed is a completely alternative vision for Cambridge, something that says what Cambridge should be like if we looked at it from a different angle. And I think that it needs to be fleshed out and presented to the residents of Cambridge as a genuine alternative vision. Obviously, we can't do great plans about where things are going to happen. And obviously, some growth is needed. We know that new social housing is desperately needed. But if we can come up between us with the bare bones, at least, of an alternative vision, and take that out to Cambridge, to the wider populace in Cambridge, who perhaps are not members at the moment of some of our residents' association, and change it and morph it into a plan they can buy into, we may be able to put a genuine alternative on the table. So I was just going to ask whether FeCRA might, because it's an organization where a lot of people are already involved and concerned about these things, be responsible for coming up with at least the bones of a vision, the bones of where we might go, and then take that out to a broader group. It can't probably be owned by FeCRA. We'd just be seen as as the usual not in my backyard numbers. And we don't want to go in as a NIMBY proposition. But I feel a real alternative is needed. And I wanted to propose tonight that somehow or other we set about creating that. So that was all I had to say, and thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I think that that was a brilliant end to what has actually been the most interesting evening, I think. Everything that people have contributed here has been a sort of part of the picture in a way. I'm so glad, David, that you are coming onto our committee, because I think what you're proposing there is exactly what we should be doing, and in line in a way with what Stephen was also saying about how we do need to take responsibility ourselves for these things and get people engaged. And it's our future, it's our city. We've got to address these things. We can't let it, the juggernaut or that Tony showed us, we can't let that win. I think that's what I feel about it anyway. Okay, so over to Wendy.
Well, gosh, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I mean, I'm absolutely tremendous tonight. I mean, all the speakers and things. And yeah, I'd like to pick up. I've sort of written a little tiny weeny short piece, but I was just thinking about what David's saying. And the thing is, what strikes me is this something that I'm hearing. You know, David Plank said earlier about neighbours, you know, neighbouring areas as well. I'm hearing this from people right across the Oxford-Cambridge arc, from a very big region. We're talking about 5 counties now. People are putting together declarations about, they're all saying the same things. I mean, it's not, and it's about the right kind of, how we all want to live, the future, etc. And so there actually is in the making, people looking to put some kind of declaration together. And I think it's sort of something that would resonate with a lot of people. I mean, it's about, you know, it's about the future. It's about, you know, next generation, etc. So I think, rest assured, David, that we're on the case, and there are lots of people that think that way, and I think that we've all got to speak together about this. So I was just going to say, basically, to thank our speakers for setting out the issues so clearly. As they've made clear, the debate about growth needs to develop to the way that we actually live, and also reflect that this is a shared planet. Cambridge is a fast-growing city, and we have a chance to question some of the 20th century fundamentals of economics. Can we channel our energy into improving the quality of our lives and that of the planet, rather than increasing the quantity of our possessions? We hope so. And I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for attending tonight's AGM, and good night.